So today's video is about a trend that I've noticed across bookish media, whether it's Instagram or YouTube. And I began to notice certain patterns of thought, certain patterns of views across both mediums. And I wanted to take this time to bring them to light and to ask some questions about why this seems to be the case, or why no one else seems to have a problem with this. So, for instance, BookTube was my first platform. BookTube was where I first began watching vlogs where people also log in what they're reading that week. And I started to notice that if everyone remembers correctly, 2020 was around when the J.K. Rowling incident happened.
I don't really want to get into the whole backstory of how J.K. Rowling came under the fire for her tweets, but let's just say it began with this tweet, and then the major backlash by even people in the Harry Potter world, people like Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson, everyone started to speak up against this essay. And again, I would urge you all to go and read it for yourself because it's a rather long essay and it's nuanced. And to my knowledge, nobody in BookTube truly contended with the nuances that J.K. Rowling brought up. To this day, the only thing that I ever hear being echoed across these book platforms is that she's a transphobe. It's like everyone ran for the conclusion, but they didn't read the reasoning. And I don't understand why, in all this noise about who J.K. Rowling is as a person, why has all the nuance been lost? Why are we not having proper debates about this?
Today, we are going to be discussing a very controversial book, and that is Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin, who burns billionaire J.K. Rowling alive.
My problem is not precisely why you agree or disagree. I think that's the least interesting part about this conversation. The more interesting part is truly contending with what she has to say, and I have not seen that yet. All I hear are instances of people either unhauling her books.
The next series I'm getting rid of because I'm no longer supporting the author, and that is J.K. Rowling. Fuck, these books are heavy. Jesus Christ. Heavy with transphobia.
Or not even mentioning her name, just saying she who must not be named. Countless videos after videos, posts after posts of people just telling me that she is who she is without giving me the reasons, as if the reason is in her disagreement in itself. What I don't understand is, why can someone not criticize the trans movement without automatically being labeled a transphobe?
We don't like J.K. Rowling in this house. So I'm thinking maybe if I do read them in Dutch, every time I finish a book, I will donate to a trans organization, just in spite.
I don't support authors that I don't agree with. The big example, of course, is J.K. Rowling. I don't want to give her any of my money. I don't want to give her any oxygen. She takes up too much of that as it is. And I feel like it inevitably gives her a platform, and she ends up using that platform to actively harm transgender people.
The whole situation with J.K. Rowling was horrible because I love Harry Potter to pieces. It's really, really important to me. I have a quote from the book tattooed on my skin. And when J.K. Rowling came out with those tweets, I felt so betrayed and heartbroken because Harry Potter, for me, has always been a very, very safe space where, you know, people get to be included and treated equally. And then she came out with all of these opinions that were very, very exclusionary and damaging to people from the trans community, which was horrible. I obviously no longer follow J.K. Rowling on Twitter, and I am pretending that the books were written by someone who doesn't have that opinion.
And why is it that only trans people or certain trans people have the right to decode what is being said about their community and then spread that meaning across other people outside the community? It is as if it's the same phenomena of how the Bible was always interpreted by the preachers, and the preachers decided on the meaning of the Bible, and we all had to just agree with the meaning. I'm sorry, I disagree with that system completely. I believe in a democratic, much more inclusive reading of a common text, a common cultural text. If a cultural moment shook us to such a degree, is it not our right, is it not our responsibility to have it be scanned by other eyes that, you know, have different experiences, who think differently, to get multiple interpretations of the same text and then finally come to a conclusion about what we as an individual, what I as an individual actually think? or that's what I thought the whole point of critical thinking was. And for some reason, like bookstagram and booktube has completely abandoned that. For what? For ideological fealty? For political correctness?
The second issue upon which there is absolute consensus, it seems, is the issue of the Israel and Palestine war that is currently going on.
Hannah from Hannah's Library has organized the Reading is Resistance Readathon to amplify Palestinian voices.
The reel just before this one, I kind of talk about how there was this instantaneous flooding of our social medias by pro-Palestinian groups that sort of shaped the cultural discourse around this issue. And I kind of questioned their motives and I questioned their origins, that it's very strange that none of us subscribed to this type of messaging or subscribed to knowing this stuff in the first place, and yet we were all bombarded with it nonetheless. And we all accepted it. We all took on this cause because we're good people, because we want to lend a hand to a cause where people, specifically innocent people, are being killed for no reason or seemingly so. So the reason I want to bring up what I said in the previous video and want to take it forward in this video is because I think there is something to be said about manipulating innocent and authentic and legitimate responses of emotion towards a cause. I will not blame anybody who has shed a tear for a child, or a Palestinian child who has suffered unjustly in this war. None of you are wrong, none of you are bad people, none of you are in my mind, I mean, the fact that we have the capacity to feel for someone we have no real connection with, but to feel so deeply for them is there's nothing more beautiful than that. But what I urge you to consider is this simple question: why, when the first information from that day, from October 7th, was what happened on October 7th, why was the first instinct, what dictated us to think about the Palestinians before we thought about the Israelis who were butchered? What I want to understand and what I want everyone to consider in their own hearts and in their own conscience is, why has this become a partisan issue? If we are crying for innocent Palestinians, we ought to be crying for the innocent Israeli hostages and the original 1,200 people who were butchered on the 7th of October. It should be an equal amount of emotional outrage. What I don't understand is why so much of our outrage has become partisan, and I want you to also consider how that partisan loyalty has been shaped by narratives that we did not subscribe to, that we have by default been subject to, because that's just who we happen to follow. Because perhaps we are living in an echo chamber. Perhaps it's time for us to consider that the sources that we consult or the people that we listen to, they all have similar thought patterns, and these are patterns which no one is willing to challenge because no one wants to be a bad liberal or doesn't want to be a bad person. But critical thinking demands that we move beyond simplistic notions of morality, and that morality is actually a very complex thing. So why aren't we asking the difficult questions? Why aren't we asking ourselves, hey, why did I lend my voice to a cause that I did not know a single thing about until 2 seconds ago? There's nothing wrong with asking yourself that. You can continue to support the cause while you do this internal questioning. I would just urge you to consider what is going on here.
And finally, we come to the third issue, the most recent, the most scandalous, it seems, that has Bookstagram and Booktube all up in their, fields. And it's the election results of America in 2024 and Trump's victory in it. I mean, I cannot emphasize enough the collective meltdown that I observed across my social media apps, of people not just mourning the loss of democracy. I can even accept that reaction, because there is enough media outrage around Trump as a figure of fascism and Trump as an authoritarian figure. If those are the media outlets you listen to, it makes perfect sense why you would mourn democracy as it seems to be crashing down in front of you. What I didn't understand were people like these, saying things like "fuck you for voting for Trump," "get out of my profile," "stop following me," "get out of my face." As far as I remember, regarding discourse about disagreements, aren't we supposed to be having them in good faith? Aren't we supposed to believe that the other person has a legitimate reason for disagreeing with us? And even if we may not understand their reasons, aren't we supposed to give them the benefit of doubt? Aren't we supposed to have some sympathy for our fellow humans, even if you think they're in the wrong? Because I don't hold Kamala voters in contempt. I don't think they are losers. I don't think they're horrible people. I'm more than willing to have conversations about why I choose to think about this issue differently from them. But I don't hold them in contempt. I would never tell them to fuck off. I would never tell them to go to hell. I would never call them losers, that's for sure. I'm so confused by this response. I'm so confused. And again, I would ask you the question, how is it that an entire community of readers and thinkers, the ones who are supposed to have, they're supposed to be the most level-headed when it comes to complex issues, who are supposed to have insight into the world, how are we all collectively throwing tantrums about something that we have no control over, that we can actually choose to respond with maturity and in understanding, but we're choosing not to? I mean, isn't that the job of books? Aren't books supposed to teach us about humanity, about how collectively we have so many disagreements, but that there's so much still to love about the world? So on the one hand, there were people who were saying fuck off to all the losers who voted for Trump. There were the others who were saying things like, it's okay, we will fight back. It's okay, this is the time for us to create art. It's okay, it's time for us to come together as a community. And again, as it's a much better, preferable response to the whole Trump debacle, but it's still so strange that everyone was sharing the same Toni Morrison quote across platforms. And it was as if this is what I want to end this conversation on. I want to end this video on this question. Do we think that there is an echo chamber of readership? That people who read books, do you think that there's an echo chamber of opinion that the books that are being published in the 21st century, in this era of politics, do you think that all of them seem to be moving us in the same direction of thought? Because it seems like that to me for sure. How is it that every single author seems to be finding the same problems in every single society, no matter how heterogeneous they might be? How is it that every single person with whom we disagree seem to have the same common traits, the same evil opinions, the same evil traits? How? Isn't there a disparity among people who we may consider to be our enemies? Don't they all have their own characteristics? Are they not different? Do they not all have their own singular agenda? How is it that they all come under the umbrella of some phobe or some ist? I'm just very confused, and I'm not entirely sure how best to put my foot forward with this observation that I have. But I do want to make a video about it because I want to ask this question to anyone who's watching. Are we in an echo chamber? Because it certainly seems like that to me.